Okay, so let's dive into this explainer and look at one of pop culture's absolute most lingering what-if scenarios. You know the one. Today, we're literally unpacking the heartbreak and the fascinating dynamic between Monica and Richard. I mean, what actually happens when life hands you a second chance to rewrite a story long after you thought the book was slammed shut? We're going to break this whole relationship down to see exactly what happens when life decides to rewrite its characters.
We've all had that one chapter, right? The one that felt completely paused by circumstances that were just too big to ignore. That's exactly what Monica and Richard's original breakup was like, and it leaves us with this haunting, almost universal question hanging in the air. What if the timing that broke them apart suddenly wasn't a barrier anymore? Because, let's be real, some relationships don't actually feel finished, they just feel like someone hit the pause button indefinitely.
The thing is, it was never, ever about a lack of love between these two. It was just this painful, head-on collision of expectations. Monica had this intense, hyper-organized drive, and she desperately wanted kids. She was just starting that journey. But Richard? Well, he'd already lived that life. For him, that specific chapter was firmly closed. It was just a tragic matter of timing and fundamental life goals, completely separate from how much they actually cared about each other.
So what happens when time marches on, but those feelings don't completely fade away? Imagine them unexpectedly crossing paths years later in a city that, honestly, never really lets you forget anyone. And it's not some dramatic, cinematic moment in the pouring rain either. It's a quiet coincidence, just bumping into each other at a loud restaurant or catching a glimpse across the room at a mutual friend's party.
Now, to really grasp the impact of them meeting again, we absolutely have to look at how Monica has evolved. She isn't looking for someone else to write her story anymore. She's built this incredibly stable life for herself, a demanding career as a head chef, and deeply grounded friendships. She knows exactly who she is now. And crucially, she's figured out how to protect herself from losing her identity inside a relationship. She doesn't need a partner to constantly reflect her worth back at her.
And Richard? Well, he's grown too. He's older, a little softer around the edges, the way time just naturally shapes us. He still has that signature, calm maturity about him, but there's this new, deeply reflective quality. He's a guy who has lived with his choices long enough to really feel their weight and to understand the reality of the paths he decided not to take. So when they finally do run into each other, the exact location almost doesn't even matter. What matters is that profound silent pause right after their eyes lock. In that one split second, it is crystal clear that they are not the same two people who broke each other's hearts all those years ago. But that unspoken, electric connection, yeah, it's still hanging right there in the air.
It's so interesting to watch how this plays out. Their first interaction is super careful. At first, they're polite, almost guarded, like they're both terrified that one honest sentence might blow open a door they can't shut again. But then, almost inevitably, the past starts to breathe. The old jokes just naturally slip out, and that buried ease between them totally surfaces. It proves that their dynamic wasn't lost, it was just patiently waiting.
And this brings us to a really powerful truth. Those undeniable connections don't just cleanly vanish because a few calendar years flipped by. We love to trick ourselves into thinking time is an eraser for our deepest feelings. But as their easy banter shows us, just because time passes, it doesn't automatically delete human emotion or the sheer comfort of a shared history.
But here's where we hit the hard truth that neither of them can dodge. Life went in different directions. Yes, Monica gained this amazing independence, and sure, their perspectives matured immensely. But Richard's core boundaries about having kids, those haven't budged an inch. He is content with the life he chose, and that fundamental piece of him, literally the thing that broke them up, is exactly the same.
Monica has fundamentally shifted too. She's no longer the woman who thinks love is a magic wand that can fix any logistical nightmare. She's grown into someone who truly understands that while love is incredibly powerful, it can't, and honestly shouldn't, be used as a band-aid for their biggest differences. You just can't use love to overwrite the core life decisions that make you who you are as an individual.
Yet even knowing all of this intimately, they both feel like something is totally unfinished. It's such a fascinating paradox. They don't feel unfinished because they're secretly meant to run off into the sunset together. No, they feel unfinished because they finally have the maturity to understand each other on a whole new, profound level. They can actually appreciate each other as true equals now, which frankly they just weren't capable of back then.
And because they aren't desperately trying to save the present, they're finally free to unpack the past. Instead of arguing about what should have happened or trying to change the other person, they get totally honest. They unpack all that intense pressure they felt,
the terrifying fear of the future, and those gut-wrenching, impossible choices that love sometimes forces us to make.
During this incredibly vulnerable conversation, Richard makes this huge admission. He finally tells Monica something he never fully expressed. Walking away wasn't easy for him either, and it stayed with him a lot longer than he ever expected. It wasn't this dramatic, scream-into-the-void regret. It was just a quiet, lingering awareness that some connections don't just fade neatly into the background of a busy life. And Monica, she listens to this, but not like someone who's desperately waiting for a second chance. She listens with deep, genuine understanding. She can finally see the entire shape of what they had without the suffocating anxiety of trying to fix it. And that completely flips the script. The whole narrative shifts from, can we get back together, to wait, should we?
The realization they come to is simple, but man, is it heavy. Just because you reconnect doesn't mean the structural issues that broke you apart are magically fixed. Sure, time softens the pain. It absolutely takes away the sharp, immediate sting of the breakup so you can actually breathe again and look at the person without crying. But it doesn't alter the foundation of why it ended. Because the harsh reality is, time doesn't change compatibility. If your fundamental life goals are totally opposite, like one wanting a bustling house full of kids and the other wanting a quiet, settled retirement, passing years aren't going to suddenly make those puzzle pieces fit. No matter amount of sweet nostalgia can bridge a gap that's built on completely different visions for the future.
So, what does time actually change? It changes perspective. It gives you the distance you need to look back at the relationship and those impossible decisions you made without being blinded by fresh heartbreak. You can finally step back, see the reality of what happened, and look at what you had with immense gratitude, instead of holding on to lingering resentment or this desperate, aching longing. The real beauty here is that Monica realizes she doesn't need anyone to complete her story. She is actively building it herself. Anyone who comes into her life now has to fit into the confident, self-assured woman she's already become. And Richard mirrors this perfectly. He knows that reopening this specific chapter without actually changing their core conflict is just a one-way ticket right back to the exact same heartbreak. So, instead of falling back into a doomed romance or slipping into comfortable old habits, they do something incredibly grounded. They anchor themselves right in the present. They make the active choice to prioritize honesty over nostalgia. They acknowledge exactly what they were, what they are right now, and, most importantly, they completely accept what they can never be.
Through all of this radical honesty, they find this quiet, beautiful kind of love. It's not the intense kind that demands a dramatic forever. It's a mature love that respects reality enough to just let go. No bitterness, no grand sweeping speeches, and absolutely no massive emotional breakdown that usually comes with the end of an era.
When they finally part ways this time, there's no confusion, only this absolute empowering clarity. And I think it proves such an uplifting point about life. Sometimes people come back into your world for one specific reason, to show you your own incredible transformation. It isn't about rewriting history at all. It's a profound moment of recognizing exactly how much you've grown.
As we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought to chew on. Take a second to reflect on your own life. Who from your past showed up again just to help you realize how far you've come since your story ended? Think about how those paused chapters shaped the exact person you are today. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I'll catch you next time.